Ethan Cole never imagined his day would end in a palace. He was an inventor, not a hero. That morning had started with excitement and nerves. He had been testing his new flying craft made from steel, glass, and stubborn hope. The idea was simple: create the first airship that could stay steady in strong winds. But reality, as always, loved to prove him wrong. The machine rattled and shook when he rose above the valley. Clouds darkened and winds screamed in his ears. He fought for control, pulling every lever, twisting every crank, begging the invention to listen. Then lightning flashed. A loud crack followed, and his ship spun out of balance. The ground came rushing up, the world turned upside down, and then nothing. When Ethan opened his eyes again, his first thought was confusion. The floor beneath him was smooth and cold, like polished marble. Above him hung great chandeliers, their crystals glowing softly. He blinked, trying to make sense of the strange hall. Gold pillars rose high into an arched ceiling. Long banners of red and silver hung on both sides. Soldiers stood silently along the walls, their faces stern under polished helmets. He tried to sit up, but his muscles screamed in protest. His flight jacket was torn, his face was covered in dust. He could still taste smoke in his mouth. Then he noticed rows of people staring at him, men in fine coats, women in silk dresses, servants clutching trays. And at the far end of the hall, a woman on a grand throne. She was unlike anyone Ethan had ever seen. Her dress shimmered, the fabric as soft and light as morning mist. A golden crown rested on her dark hair, and her blue eyes shone with calm intelligence. There was no anger on her face, only interest, as though she were studying an unexpected puzzle. Ethan realized with horror that he was kneeling in front of a queen. Before his brain could process that, his unsteady legs betrayed him. He tried to bow properly, to show respect, but his foot slipped on the smooth marble. He stumbled forward, arms flailing, and crashed into a tall vase beside the steps of the throne. The vase burst into hundreds of pieces. The crash echoed through the silent room. Every courtier froze. The guards tightened their grip on their spears. Someone gasped. Ethan stared at the shattered vase, then at the queen, his heart pounding so hard he thought the sound would fill the hall. "I am so sorry," he blurted out. His voice echoed awkwardly in the silence. "I didn't mean well, it wasn't supposed to." He stopped. Words failed him completely. His hands were shaking. He thought she would order him dragged away at once. After all, what kind of fool destroyed royal property the moment he entered a throne room? He braced himself, waiting for fury. But something unexpected happened. Instead of shouting or calling the guards, the queen began to laugh. Not a polite laugh, not mocking either, but a soft, warm laugh that filled the great hall. The courtiers looked at each other in shock. The sound seemed to melt the cold air between them. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Of all the reactions he had imagined, laughter had not been one of them. When her laughter faded, she looked down at him. "You are a strange man," she said gently. "You fall from the sky, destroy one of my oldest vases, and then you look more frightened than any man I have ever met." Ethan swallowed, not sure what to say. "I didn't mean to break anything, Your Majesty," he managed to whisper. "I can guess that much," she said with a smile. "Tell me your name's Skyfall, man." "Ethan Cole, Your Majesty." "Well, I was a test pilot, sort of an inventor. There was an accident. I don't even know where I am." The queen studied him quietly, her eyes thoughtful. "You are in the kingdom of Valinor," she said, "and it seems destiny has decided to drop you at my feet." The courtiers murmured nervously. No one dared interrupt. She turned to a guard. "Fetch a healer. Someone bring this man fresh clothes. He looks half burned and half terrified." Ethan stared at her, unsure what to think. Most rulers he had read about were proud, strict, even cruel. But this woman seemed almost amused by the chaos he had brought. As the guards helped him to his feet, he looked once more at the queen. There was kindness in her eyes, but also power, kind of strength that needed no shouting to be felt. Ethan felt suddenly smaller, but strangely safe. He was led away down the marble corridor, still blinking in disbelief. Somewhere behind him, he could hear the queen's calm voice speaking to her advisors. The broken vase was already being cleaned up, as though such accidents were nothing new. Yet Ethan knew his life had just taken a turn he would never forget. Whatever strange place this was, whatever strange queen ruled it. He sensed that this meeting born out of disaster and clumsiness was not the end of his story, but the beginning of a far greater one. Ethan woke the next morning in a large room that looked like something from a picture book. The walls were carved with golden vines, and soft curtains swayed by the window. The bed was so wide that he could stretch both arms and still not reach the edges. A servant stood quietly by the door, waiting. She looked nervous, but smiled kindly when she saw him awake. "The Queen has asked for you," she said softly. Ethan blinked. "The Queen?" "Yes," she replied. "She says she wants to speak with you herself." He quickly sat up. Fresh clothes had been placed beside the bed, simple but clean. He changed and followed her through the long halls of the castle. Every corner looked like a dream. There were shining lights that flickered like small stars and long carpets, soft as clouds under his boots. When he reached the grand chamber, the Queen sat near a tall window that looked over green hills and silver rivers. She was reading something on a scroll. When Ethan entered, she looked up immediately. "Ah, the Skyfall man," she said with a small smile. "I trust my healers treated you well?" Ethan bowed as best he could without tripping. "They did, Your Majesty. Thank you. I still can't believe I'm here. It feels like I fell into another world." "You did not fall into another world," she said. "You only fell into another way of living. Tell me, Ethan Cole, what is the world like where you come from?" Ethan hesitated. How could he explain engines, electricity, and metal flying machines to a person whose guards still carried spears? He decided to keep it simple. "A place where people build things," he said slowly.
"Oh."
"Where light comes from power we make, and we travel through the skies in great iron ships that carry us faster than horses." The Queen looked curious, not afraid. "And do these things make your people wiser?" she asked. Ethan paused. "Sometimes they do," he said honestly. "But sometimes they make us careless too. Still, we always keep trying to do better." Her eyes softened, the way the morning sun softens the chill in the air. "Trying to do better," she repeated. "That sounds like a good rule to live by." She stood and walked closer, studying him as if he were a strange book she meant to understand page by page. "You are lucky that I chose patience yesterday," she said. "Many rulers would not forgive the destruction of a royal vase." Ethan's cheeks grew hot. "I'm lucky, yes. You had every reason to throw me out, Your Majesty." The Queen gave a small, amused laugh. "True, but I saw something unusual in your eyes yesterday. Most men who stand before me tremble and say whatever they think will please me. You trembled as well, yes, but yours came from confusion, not fear. You looked shocked by your own misfortune, and yet you still tried to speak truthfully. I admire that." Ethan smiled awkwardly. "If honesty counts for anything, I guess I can manage that much." "Good," said the Queen. "Then perhaps you will be willing to share more of this knowledge from your world. My scholars are clever, but they have grown lazy with the comfort of old traditions. They have forgotten curiosity. Maybe you can remind them that learning is not a threat." Ethan frowned slightly. "Not everyone wants new ideas, Your Majesty. In my world too. Sometimes people fear what they don't understand." She nodded. "People here are the same, but still we must try." At her word, a group of scholars entered, men and women with ink-stained hands and watchful eyes. They bowed deeply before the Queen, then turned their gaze toward Ethan. It felt like they were judging him already, measuring every word he might say. "This is Ethan Cole," said the Queen, her voice graceful but firm. "He will share stories of the world beyond our borders. You will learn from him what it means to be curious again." The court whispered, but no one dared oppose her. Ethan wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Only a day ago he had fallen from the sky, broken a priceless vase, and nearly fainted from fear. Now he was supposed to teach a kingdom full of scholars. When the Queen dismissed them, Ethan lingered. The hall grew quiet again. He looked at her with wonder. "Why are you helping me, Your Majesty? You don't even know who I am." She turned to the window and watched the sun peek through the clouds. "Because once, a long time ago, I made a mistake before my own teacher," she said softly. "He forgave me, and from that forgiveness came understanding. If I cannot offer the same, what kind of ruler would I be?" Her words stayed in Ethan's mind long after he left. That night, as he lay awake in his soft bed, the wind hummed gently through the windows. He thought of his broken airship somewhere in the hills, the path that had brought him here, and the queen's laughter echoing in his memory. He realized he had fallen not just into her kingdom, but into a story far larger than he had planned. A story where a single mistake might change the fate of two very different people and, perhaps of an entire world, that had forgotten how to dream. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan slowly became part of life in the royal court. At first, the scholars kept their distance. They watched him from across the great library, whispering to each other as he drew strange shapes and lines on his parchment. But curiosity grew stronger than their fear. One by one, they began to gather around him, asking careful questions. Ethan used whatever he could find to teach them. Wooden wheels became models of gears, candles became lessons on energy, and simple ropes and stones became examples of how force could move great weight. He knew these were only small ideas, but in this kingdom, they looked like miracles. The queen often came to watch quietly, standing in the doorway of the library with her hands folded. She said nothing, but her eyes followed every movement, her expression calm and thoughtful. Ethan wondered what she dreamed of when she watched him work flying ships perhaps, or bridges that touched the clouds. One afternoon, she entered the library while Ethan was showing the scholars a small machine he had built from scraps of metal. It was meant to spin a blade using heat. The queen leaned over the table, interested. "And this motion," she asked, "comes only from the warmth of the fire." "Yes, Your Majesty," Ethan said eagerly. "The metal expands when heated, and that push turns the wheel." The scholars leaned closer too, their faces glowing in the firelight. Ethan lit the small flame beneath the device. For a moment the wheel trembled, but did not move. Then suddenly it began to spin, faster with each passing second. The scholars gasped in surprise and clapped their hands. The queen's eyes widened like a child seeing light for the first time. But then, with a loud clang, the wheel slipped from its base and rolled across the room, crashing into a chest of scrolls. Smoke rose from the table, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Silence fell. A few scholars took a cautious step back. Ethan rubbed his forehead in embarrassment. "It was working fine 5 minutes ago," he muttered. The queen stared for a moment, then started to laugh. It was the same laugh that had surprised him the first day they met, warm, musical, and full of life. "You certainly have a gift for breaking things in my palace, Ethan Cole," she said between laughs. Ethan grinned weakly. "It seems to be my special talent, Your Majesty." She waved aside the worried guards who had rushed in. "Leave it," she said. "Mistakes are the price of discovery." That evening, as the servants cleaned the mess, the queen invited Ethan to join her in the palace garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep orange and gold. The garden was quiet, except for the soft sound of fountains. "You do not give up easily," she said as they walked between the roses. "I can't," Ethan replied. "If I stopped every time something failed, I would never finish anything." "Failure teaches faster than success," the queen smiled. "You sound much like my old teacher used to. He once told me that courage is not in never falling, but in rising again each time you do." She looked at the roses for a while before continuing, "My people fear change. They believe peace means leaving the world untouched. But peace can turn into stillness, and stillness into weakness. Your arrival has opened their minds again, and for that I am grateful." Ethan looked at her, surprised by how sincere her voice was. "Most rulers I know wouldn't want someone like me stirring things up," he said. "I am not most rulers," she answered softly. A gentle breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of roses. For a moment, Ethan felt as if the whole world had gone quiet, leaving only the sound of her calm breathing beside him. They walked until the garden lights began to glow. When they reached the marble bridge at the center of the garden, the queen stopped. "Tomorrow, I want you to show the council what you have made," she said. "Let them see that wisdom can be built with hands, not just words." Ethan felt a wave of nervousness. "Your Majesty, I don't think they want to see me. Some of them already think I am a fool." "Let them think what they wish," she said. "Prove them wrong." Later that night, Ethan worked by lamplight in his small workshop. The flicker of the lamp danced across his papers and gears. He felt doubt creeping in, but he remembered the queen's laughter and the way she had defended him before everyone. He tightened the parts, checked the joints, and tested the motion again. The wheel spun smoothly this time, reflecting the light like a bright coin. Ethan smiled to himself. He had fallen before a queen, broken her vase, and failed more than once. But every time she had turned his mistakes into moments of learning. He now understood that his journey was no longer just about science. It was about proving that hope could live anywhere, even in a palace built on old traditions. As he leaned back and looked out the window at the sleeping city, he whispered, almost to himself, "Tomorrow, I'll make her proud." The next morning came bright and clear, but Ethan's stomach was full of worry. The Queen had asked him to show his invention to the Royal Council, and he knew that many of them did not trust him. They thought his strange tools and noisy machines were dangerous. He could already imagine their cold eyes and careful whispers. He arrived at the council hall early, carrying the small machine he had spent the entire night fixing. The guards stood tall at the doors, their armor shining. Inside, the long table was filled with important men and women wearing fine robes. Among them was Lord Dareth, the Queen's advisor. A tall man with sharp eyes, who always looked as if he smelled something unpleasant. The Queen entered soon after. Her calm presence filled the room like sunlight after rain. Everyone rose from their seats and bowed. When she sat, her voice carried softly but firmly across the hall. "Today we will listen to Ethan Cole. He brings ideas from a faraway land, ideas that may help our kingdom grow." Lord Dareth gave a tight smile. "Your Majesty, we have always lived well under tradition. I see no reason to fill our noble halls with the smoke of broken gadgets." The Queen gave him a patient look. "You fear what you do not yet understand, Lord Dareth. Consider this demonstration an opportunity to learn." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he set the machine on the table. It looked simpler. A few gears, a small wheel, and a base with a small lantern underneath. He cleared his throat and began.
"Ow.
Your Majesty, members of the Council, this is a model that shows how heat can create motion. With more work, this idea could help in moving carts or lifting heavy stone." The council members leaned forward uncertainly. Some of them chuckled quietly. Dareth folded his arms and murmured something to the person beside him. Ethan lit the small lamp beneath the machine and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He could feel his heart pounding, and slowly, the wheel began to spin. The faint sound of metal clicking filled the room. Faster and faster it turned, light flickering off its surface. Gasps filled the hall. Even those who had laughed before now stared with wide eyes. The Queen's face softened with quiet pride. Ethan smiled a little. "It's simple now, but with better materials we could make it stronger. Imagine if your ships could move without sails, or if farmers could grind their grain without horses." "Impossible," muttered one council member. But Dareth slammed his hand on the table. "Dangerous," he said loudly. "This tricks the common folk into thinking they can control nature. What happens when such power escapes control? Fire and ruin, nothing else? This foreigner plays with forces he does not understand." A wave of tense murmurs swept the room. Ethan's voice wavered for a moment. "With care and learning, it could help all of you." "Enough," snapped Dareth. "He should be sent away before his toys destroy us all." The Queen rose from her chair. A calm voice cut through the noise. "Enough, indeed." The hall fell silent at once. She looked at Dareth directly. "You'll fear new things, because they do not bow to your comfort. You would rather see us remain asleep than risk waking up." Dareth hesitated, but his pride would not let him yield. "My duty is to protect the crown," he said stiffly. "And what if he means harm? Should we trust his words more than the safety of our land?" The Queen stepped forward. "Ethan Cole has brought no harm, only ideas. That is more than can be said for those who use fear to hold on to their power." For a long moment, no one breathed. Finally, Dareth bowed stiffly and left the hall without another word. The other council members lowered their eyes, pretending not to see. When the Queen turned back to Ethan, her face had lost none of its calm. "You did well," she said softly. "You stood your ground." Ethan let out a shaky breath. "I thought he was going to have me thrown out." She smiled gently. "You will learn something, Ethan. Great change always begins with anger. Those who cling to the old ways will fight hardest. But that is how you know you are moving in the right direction." He looked at her then, and for the first time, he realized how much she carried alone. Her calmness was not weakness. It was strength born from years of holding peace between people who feared to move forward. That evening, the queen asked him to walk with her on the palace balcony. The sunset bathed the city in gold. Below them, the streets glimmered, alive with voices and movement. "They will speak about today," she said softly. "Some will praise you, others will curse you. But you must not stop. Promise me Athenia will keep teaching." Ethan nodded slowly. "I promise, Your Majesty." She turned her gaze toward the horizon. "Then the future may come a little sooner than they think." As the last light of the sun slipped below the hills, Ethan realized something. He had not only earned her trust, he had found a purpose worth fighting for. In that quiet moment, between the fading light and the cool evening air, he knew that whatever trials awaited him, he would face them without fear. Because the queen believed in him, and that belief meant everything. The next few weeks were not easy for Ethan. Though the queen had stood by him in front of the council, whispers began to spread through the palace and even into the streets. Some called him the queen's strange inventor. Others called him a danger who might bring ruin to the kingdom. Servants grew quiet when he passed, and a few old scholars refused to speak to him at all. Only the queen treated him the same. She still visited the library almost every evening to see what he was building. Her visits always filled the room with ease. She asked questions, smiled at his progress, and listened when he spoke about his old home. Each time she left, Ethan felt a strange warmth that lingered long after she was gone. But outside her kindness, pressure grew. Lord Dareth had not disappeared. He met secretly with a few other members of the council who shared his fear of Ethan's inventions. They said Ethan's machines were tricks meant to give him power. They said the queen was blinded by curiosity. Little by little, their words began to stir the people's doubt. One night, the queen invited Ethan to dine with her. The hall was quieter than usual. Candlelight flickered across the long table. She seemed worried, though she tried to hide it behind her gentle smile. "The council grows restless," she said softly. "They think you hold too much influence over me." Ethan sighed. "If I've caused you trouble, Your Majesty, I'll leave. You don't have to defend me." Her eyes lifted sharply and let fear win again. "No, Ethan. I brought you here to help restore our courage, not to run when it's tested." Ethan lowered his head. "Then tell me what to do." "Do what you always do," she said. "Show them hope." The next morning, word spread that the queen would hold a public demonstration in the city square. She wanted to show the people what Ethan had been working on. The people gathered early, filling the wide streets until there was hardly room to move. Ethan stood on a raised wooden platform, his newest machine placed before him. It was a larger version of his heat-driven wheel, carefully polished and reinforced with metal rings. Beside him stood the queen, her expression firm but calm. "Today," she said to the crowd, "we will see what courage and knowledge can create together." Ethan lit the flame beneath the wheel. The crowd murmured. Dareth, standing in the corner, watched with cold eyes. For a moment nothing happened, and Ethan's heart sank.
Ow!
Then the wheel began to turn, faster and faster, until the entire platform hummed softly with its rhythm. Children gasped. Farmers whispered to each other. One of the guards even smiled. And then, as if fate had a sense of humor, a loose pin slipped from its place, and the wheel wobbled dangerously. Ethan rushed forward, caught it, and tightened the piece with quick hands. The wheel steadied. A cheer rose from the crowd. The queen smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "See?" she called out. "Discovery may shake and stumble, but it always finds its balance." Even some of the older council members nodded quietly. Only Dareth's face remained hard. He turned and walked away, fading into the crowd. When the noise finally calmed, the queen leaned toward Ethan. "You have changed this day," she said. That evening, the city glowed brighter than usual. People spoke of the wheel, of the man who turned fire into motion, and of the queen who believed in him. For the first time, Ethan felt that he truly belonged. Later, he met the queen on the palace balcony once again. The stars spread like dust across the sky. The city lights twinkled far below them. "Do you ever miss your old world?" she asked quietly. Ethan thought for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said, "but I think I was meant to fall here. Maybe I had to lose my home to find a better purpose." Her eyes softened. "And what will you do now?" He smiled faintly. "Keep building. Keep teaching." and maybe learn how not to break royal vases. She laughed, the same laugh that had first forgiven his clumsy fall and every mistake after it. When the laughter faded, she looked at him with quiet pride. "You turned, falling into flight, Ethan. That is something even kings and queens rarely manage." The night breeze moved through her hair, carrying the faint scent of the roses below. They stood there together, neither speaking for a while, watching the stars that seemed close enough to touch. Ethan knew he could never fully repay the Queen's kindness, but he would spend his life trying. From that day on, Valinor began to change. More people came to learn from him. The workshops filled with light and sound, and at the heart of it all stood the Queen, calm and wise, the one who had seen promise in a lost, clumsy man. Ethan often thought about the moment he first met her, the shock, the broken vase, and the laughter that had saved him. It was strange how a single mistake had led to so much. He had blundered before the Queen. Yet because of that blunder, he had found not only a home, but also hope. Word count: 712.